Hi, my name is Bridget Hattarati, and in this presentation I will be looking at the inclusion of children with additional needs in mainstream early childhood settings. After I chose my topic, I began to research issues and policies relating to inclusion in early childhood settings, only to find that there are no policies. Therefore, the educational issue I will be addressing is the absence of policy negating early childhood services in Australia to include children with additional needs, as per their human rights. As there is no blanket requirement or policy stating that these children have the right to attend the centre of their choice, it leaves it up to the individual centre policies about including these children and how they will support them. The Education and Care Services National Regulations supports the national law by offering detail on a variety of operational requirements for an education and care service. The National Quality Framework operates under this, and under these laws and regulations comes the National Quality Standards, which sets the high national benchmark for childcare services. The National Quality Standards have multiple references to inclusion and specifically state that equity, inclusion, and diversity underpin the framework. This is all relevant when individual services choose to include children with additional needs. However, there are no overarching laws or policies stipulating that services have to include children with additional needs, which then creates the educational issue. The disability standards are an Australian law under the Disability Discrimination Act, 1992. Under these standards, all principals and teachers have legal obligations to ensure that every student is able to participate in the curriculum on the same basis as their peers, through rigorous, meaningful, and dignified learning. However, this only makes reference to education starting from kindergarten. There is no reference to early childhood services. Relations to ethics, citizenships, and democracy. The fact that there is no policy leaves it up to the individual service to decide whether they include children with special needs. The views from the research I have conducted on this topic reflects a democratic opinion that inclusion in early childhood settings is of importance, as well as children with additional needs being included equally as citizens within our community. However, the absence of policy creates the unethical inequity of inclusion across the early childhood profession. We live in a democratic society where everyone is equal under the law and entitled to human rights. The absence of policy allows early childhood centres to deny children with additional needs their human right of education. Early childhood services should be teaching children about tolerance and acceptance, yet, paradoxically, the opposite occurs, as the absence of policy creates, as well as teaches, exclusion. All children should be able to attend early childhood services, so by the time they go to primary school, they understand and value each other's differences and are able to interact with one another, irrespective of race, learning style, ability, or disability. The priority of access guidelines for childcare services is a condition of approval and continued approval for childcare benefit purposes that services must comply with. The guidelines must be used by approved services to allocate available childcare places while on the waiting list. When filling vacant places, a service must fill them according to the following priorities. Priority 1 is a child at risk of serious abuse or neglect. Priority 2 is for children of single parents who satisfies or of parents who both satisfy the work, training, and study test. Priority 3 is to any other child. Within these main priority categories, priority should also be given to children in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families which include a disabled person, followed by other priorities. These guidelines don't prioritize children with additional needs, as they are categorized in priority 3 along with any other child. But as there is no policy, centres do not have to accept children with special needs and can choose not to. There is no literature that clearly identifies the absence of a policy in relation to inclusion in early childhood services. However, there is a number of research that addresses the importance of this issue. Early Childhood Intervention 2012 in the Working Together Agreement state that every child is entitled to access and participate in early childhood education. Inclusion and Professional Support Program define the term inclusion as bringing children with disabilities into regular educational settings. The Department of Education, Employment and Workplace Relations suggests that inclusion involves taking into account all children's social, cultural, and linguistic diversity into the curriculum decision-making process to ensure that all children's experiences are recognised and that all children have equal access to resources and participation and opportunities to demonstrate their learning and to value difference. The early years are crucial for children as they lay the foundation for all future development, so therefore we must ensure that children's early experiences are positive and that they have a secure foundation for development. The early childhood years are just as important for children with special needs as all their future development is based on the critical learning patterns established during this period. It is a time where families best learn how to support and meet the needs of their child and how to positively adapt to having a child with a disability. Amongst other barriers, with there not being a policy, centres are doing things such as denying children with disabilities into their service, telling parents their child's entry to the centre will be delayed because it is not ready to accommodate children with disabilities, parents being allocated time slots as to how long their child can attend the centre for, parents or other family members being asked to fill in for support staff because a reliever could not be found, and if this wasn't possible, families would be told to keep their child at home, parents being required to pay for additional support, parents being phoned to come and collect their child from the centre before the session ends because the teachers were finding themselves unable to cope, management placing restrictions on the number of children with disabilities who attend the centre, and management informing parents about the lack of ability of the centre to meet their child's needs. Without some kind of policy regarding inclusion in early childhood settings, parents will either have to fit in with the decisions of management, teachers and other professionals, or find another centre that will cater more inclusively for their child and family's needs, as it would be up to the individual service to create their own policy. Ways around the issue. Some solutions to these issues could be creating a policy which can be included in the overarching laws and regulations so that it flows down into the guidelines and best practices standards within centres. Another possibility would be for the Discrimination Act to cover early childhood services as well as primary and secondary education. The early childhood national laws and regulations should include inclusion policies so that it becomes a licensing requirement of services and conditional of licensing approval. Lastly, access to early intervention programs could be provided and incorporated into early childhood settings, as it is known that early intervention leads to better outcomes. How does this fix the issue? While the benefits of inclusion are becoming more widely acknowledged, there are a number of barriers to inclusion that needs to be considered. Being aware of such barriers is an important step in becoming clear about establishing goals for the future and what can be done to address the most pressing issues or challenges relating to inclusive practice. Having a policy in place takes away the discretion in which individual services and their own centre policies and practices determine whether or not they will include children with additional needs. This policy would need to be put in place or enforced with more funding to support services with inclusion so that, as citizens, children are given the right to commence early childhood care and education before being excluded due to the barriers mentioned previously. Thank you.